So, Cady, welcome to our Zaharis family. We're so grateful that you would take time from Massachusetts today to join us and visit with us a little bit and share some of the amazing experiences that you've had. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Let's see. Seeing if I'm chopping off the top of my head. And, I have a friend that really likes to read as well. This is, I thought I would bring my cat because actually Fang loves to sit on my lap when I read.
Ah.
Oh,
And
okay.
her name is Fang.
But you know what's very funny is we actually have two cats. And they're not really the best of friends. They sort of tolerate each other. And in fact, the other one is right over here. This is Saber, and Saber is sort of like the sort of calmer kitty, right? But Fang is really like the boss, the older brother, right? And so Fang usually loved to get up on my lap, but then he realized that Saber was like already at that level, and he was a little jealous.
Well, it's nice to meet Fang and Saber. Cady, tell us about your family. You have children, I think that you said?
I do. I have two, I say kids, but they're both actually grown. I'll show you a picture a little bit later of, oh, actually, I could show you a picture right now. Should I do that?
Yes.
Let's see. Here we go. Options for sharing. Let's see. There we go. Where did it go? And there we go. So this is my son, Jamie. And he is, this is how old he was when I was living up on the space station. He was 10 and he was in 4th grade. And this is Fang, just a little bit younger. And Jamie is, it looks like he's maybe playing computer games, but actually he's writing in his journal, which he likes to do both on paper, but also he likes to collect pictures and then write things on the computer. And he's had a journal since he was about 7 years old. And he still keeps a journal all on his own. Never even, his parents don't even have to say anything to him. So that's kind of cool. But this is Fang and Jamie working on his journal.
Thank you for sharing that, Cady. And when you were on the International Space Station, I'm sure that you must have been able to communicate with your family.
Well, that's what's really nice. And actually, I'll tell Shannon, I'm having a little trouble. There we go. I was going to say stop sharing for just a minute. I loved being up there in space, and yet I really loved, I love my family a lot. And my son was 10 when I was up there, and my stepson was about a little over 20, an older kid. And we actually, had to figure out how to be a family, even though I was up in space. And I wondered if maybe some of your students are experiencing this where, their grandparents don't live very far away, but you can't go see each other during this time of trying to make sure that we keep each other safe. And we had to learn how to do that. And just talking on the phone is actually pretty nice. And if there's a way to do something where you see a picture of, where you can actually see FaceTime or see a video like we're having here today, it's amazing how much difference that makes to see a face where you get to see, oh, is that face kind of tired? Is that face excited, even though the voice might not show that it's excited? Is that face bored, looking around? So I think it's really, we had to figure out how to do those things. And actually, one of the things, I know this is reading time for you, one of the things that Jamie, my son, and I would do is when we started off, we would talk on the phone and I would say, hey, how was your day? And then he would go, fine. And he'd say, how was your day, Mom? I'd think, oh, it was fine. Well, that gets to be a little bit thing. And so then we decided we would read together. And we read a book. It was a long book. We would read a little bit together every night, which was very cool for us.
Thank you, Cady. Boys and girls, I want to remind you to keep your microphone on mute, because if it's not, we get a lot of feedback. So it's very important that your microphone is on mute. Thank you. Cady, I can't remember who the astronaut was. Neil Armstrong, Alan Shepard. I can't remember who it was, but I remember one time hearing one of your colleagues, one of your NASA colleagues say that as he was looking back down onto this beautiful planet that we live on, this blue marble that he was seeing from space, that he realized that everything in the world that mattered to him was on that blue marble. I can only imagine as you were in space thinking, this is where my family lives. What was that like seeing them from afar? Did you have any kind of a moment of reflection when you were up there looking down? I'm sure you probably had them regularly every day.
I would say all the time, hey, Owen, I think you might be sharing your screen, maybe by mistake. So let me grab this real quick. One of you, I actually have an art planet here, which I don't know if you can see that, but I think all of us are explorers in different ways. And my husband is an artist, and you'll see some pictures of him later. And he likes to make these planets that are made out of glass. And it gives me a way to sort of show you, you know, when we're up in space on the space station, we're not like way far out here. If this was the Earth, we're actually just like this far up. It's not so far. And so we're going around. We go around the Earth 16 times every day. That means, like, if you are the sun where the camera is, that means it's sunny, sunny, sunny. Oh, now it's dark. And then 45 minutes later, it's sunny again. So basically, every hour and a half, I see a sunset. And every hour and a half, I see a sunrise. So nighttime, daytime, which is a little confusing for us. But when we're going around the Earth, when we go around the part that, like, let's say that's where I live right here, when I'm going over, then my family can look up, and when it's nighttime, they can see the space station go by. So I would actually be talking to them on our kind of space phone. And I would say, I'm about to come over our house. And they would go outside in the yard and they would look up and they would see the space station go overhead. And that would actually be my homework assignment to all of the families, is that the computer can kind of help you with this. If you Google space station sighting or where is the space station, it will tell you, you put in your zip code or your town, it will tell you when you're going to be able to see the space station. It's not every single night or every single morning, but when you look, it'll tell you, is it going to be in the south or the north and how far up? And when you just look in that direction, and then you see stars, and you're looking, you're thinking, is this, oh, somebody's not good. You just think, oh, is that it? Is that star moving? Oh, I don't know. And then suddenly you will just see it just kind of like going like this. It's not zipping. And it's just kind of like, it's really about this speed. And you will see the space station, and there's like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people up there living in space. And my family got to see that.
Oh. Cady, thank you for sharing that. Last night, like many of our Zaharis family members that are viewing today, by the way, we're getting close now to 200, so I'm anticipating that we probably have about 600 to 700 people that are viewing in. So our viewing audience is getting larger by the moment. But last night, as I was watching the film Hidden Figures, there was a quote by one of the engineers that was working with Katherine Johnson, and he said, "We're living the impossible." And I started thinking about some of the amazing things that people like yourself do. And one of my favorite quotes is, "It's only impossible until somebody does it. Why not us?" But Cady, when you were in elementary school, we're about the same age, but when you were in elementary school, I know that Sally Ride hadn't made her legendary first voyage into space as the first female astronaut in space. And our fourth graders were sending me texts saying, we've been studying about her life this year as learners at Zaharis School, as we've done an inquiry into space exploration. But you didn't have female astronauts when you were little to look to even know that it was impossible. So tell us a little bit about this journey of being a little girl without any females ever having traveled to space, to living on the International Space Station for almost 6 months and having 2 space shuttle voyages that you were able to experience. How does that happen? How do you make something impossible like that happen?
Well, I think you start by doing just what you're doing at Zaharis. You start by asking questions. Like, who gets to do that? Is it fun? Or when you meet somebody that does something that you think is interesting, realize that you, as a student, you as one of like the future problem solvers of the whole world, your questions are so important. And that's why I'm anxious to answer some of them today. But for me, when I grew up, I didn't really get to see pictures or videos or movies of women who went to space. And to tell you the truth, it never really occurred to me to do that. And it wasn't until I was much older, like in college, that I got to meet Dr. Sally Ride, who was the first American woman astronaut. And all of a sudden, when I saw her, suddenly it made sense like, oh, she seems like a regular person just like me. Maybe I could do that. And the reason I tell you this story is because I think it's really important to see yourself in different kinds of things. I mean, you are young and you have lots of time to figure out what you might like to be when you grow up. And what I would urge you to do is try on some different things that you think you might like to do. And just think, oh, I wonder what if I did this? What if I did that? And realize maybe you're not good at that. Well, but does it matter if you really like it? So realize that you can try on some different ways, different things of different ways of being things. And that's why, like when you are in class and your teacher asks you to write about what did you do this weekend, or what's important to you, or any question that has to do with what you think, when you write about that or you make a project or an art thing, realize that your friends are seeing that. Kids that are not your friends are seeing that. Lots of people are seeing that and they're like, wow, she made that. Maybe I could make that. She thought that. I think that too. And I didn't think anybody else felt like that. And that's why it's so important to like do things that you think, are interesting and share them with other people. Because that's, if Sally Ride hadn't decided to share herself with me, I would not be an astronaut.
Katie, I had goosebumps as you were sharing your thoughts with us because we are not like most schools. Our school is a school of inquiry. And so instead of this model where you transmit content to kids and they receive it, download it, and then spit it back out to prove that they learned, we ask questions and those questions guide their study and they solve real world problems and they do real world work. But on one of the doors outside of the sixth grade classrooms, it says to be on a quest is nothing more or less than to be an asker of questions. So I've taken careful notes on how our future problem solvers are going to be the ones to change the world. And it begins by asking questions. Thank you so much for sharing that. That really resonates with us.
It is the questions. It's true.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you a couple other questions so the kids could get to know you a little bit before we start sharing, but I think we're ready to go. So we can ask some more questions at the end, but I know you have some pictures and some things that you'd like to share with us. So shall we turn the time over for you for that sharing now?
Sure, I would love to. And let's see, I am just going to and so I'm going to show a whole bunch of pictures just because I like pictures, I guess. But here I am sharing that. I have to figure out how I really got to do that. That's great. So this is the space shuttle. And I went 2 times in the space shuttle. And you see the little tiny windows right up at the top? I am right under one of those windows. And that is the most amazing thing. Right there where we have just blasted off and we are still next to the launch pad, we are already going 100 miles an hour. I'm not kidding. It's so, so cool. And let's see, I'm gonna do this. And let's see. Do we, I have a message here saying someone is requesting to annotate the shared content. Should I say yes to that? Michael?
No. No.
Okay, no.
Okay. Okie doke. Oops. And I'm just gonna, I can just hit escape. Okay, I just wanted to know what to do. See, questions, and I got answers. That's great. So this is a picture. If you look, it's the Earth, and there's space, and then right above the Earth, just where I was showing you with my planet there, is the space station. On the left is the space shuttle, which attaches to the space station, and then the rest of the space station. Oops, let me do this. And Sometimes, here we go. And this is when the space shuttle takes off, how fast we're going. By the time we're done, we are going 17,500 miles an hour. It is so fast and so much fun. This is our crew. There were 5 of us on my second shuttle mission. We launched a giant telescope. It was sitting in the back of the space shuttle. The back of the space shuttle is kind of like the back of a dump truck. And in that, we had a giant telescope. It was my job to launch it. And let's see if that's going to do that. Oops, sorry. Let me just do this back to where we were. 1 second. Just getting those requests for sharing content or the annotating. And so here is our crew. And the person I want you to see is in the middle. I mean, I'm on the right there, right under the space shuttle. But by my commander, who was in charge of the whole big important mission, is Colonel Eileen Collins. She's in the middle there. It was the first time that we had a mom be in charge and a woman be in charge of the space shuttle. And our big project was to launch a telescope that helps us see black holes, which are really cool. So here's our space station. And there's our crew. There's 6 of us. And you'll notice that we're all different and all the flags along the bottom there. It's an international space station and people come from all different countries. And this is how we go up. We go up 3 at a time. And then when we get there, there's already 3 people. So this is myself on the left, my colleague Dmitry Kondratiev from Russia in the middle, and Paolo Nespoli on the right. And this is how big our spaceship is. It is really tiny. It's like the size of 3 smart cars. Or well, and it's inside the place we sit, it's the size of 1 smart car. We actually have kind of 3 of them hooked together to give us a little place to spread out if we need to. But when we're launching, this is where we are sitting, very close. And this is how big our space station is. And that's why it's really cool when we get up there from our little tiny capsule and we get up to the space station, you can see it is giant. Here's a little movie.
Look, is that her?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Your microphone muted.
She has to launch it every time.
And so some of you don't have your microphones muted. Let's see.
Yeah, she said that's like a dirty dump of it.
There we go. And there is the
They were
rocket
out, like-
launching. I'm not in the tiny little skinny part.
Everybody saw what you guys
I'm in the part that is like
and
the
then
sort
she
of
said,
big round part there.
No, we're not.
Here is our this is our little capsule
You're unmuted.
coming in.
You're still unmuted.
My favorite part of the whole movie, flying around. That's what we do up there. We fly everywhere. And this is some of the experiments that we do. This is us. We're actually looking at pictures of our family. We all get to do some things that we think are fun. I like to play the flute, so I brought several flutes up there. And you can see our space station and the robotic arm. It's a really cool place. We can look out the window. We can see the Earth. That's what it looks like when I am looking out the window of the space station. And that is the Aurora Borealis.
Okay.
Isn't that beautiful? We call it the Northern Lights. This is faster than we really go around the Earth, but all those little lights that you see, all of them are lights of cities. The little sparkles, those are lightning. And then this is Ireland, where my grandparents come from. So it's the last picture in my little movie. And there's the space station. And this is why we go to space, because up there, everything floats around. And what that means for scientists is we get to find out things we can't figure out down here on the ground. And it's really, really a lot of fun. This is gummy bears. So I wanted to do an experiment and see what they would be like to eat in space. This is what, when I want to drink water, if I squirt some out of my juice bag, this is what happens. It's a big drop of water. And so the water is round. And that's because without gravity, making it be like a puddle on the ground, we get to see what do liquids really want to do. And it turns out they want to be really round, and there's forces that keep them like that. And it turns out that when we learn all about that, we get to understand, ooh, how does everything that we want to make in a factory that has to go through a pipe, how does that work? How do rivers work? How do oceans work? how do the pipes that we have in our body, our veins and arteries, how do those work? So we, even though we're doing one experiment, it answers lots and lots of questions. And I know that you are really good question answers. And so this is a question, how can we grow plants in space? Now, or why do we want to grow plants in space? I think the first question might be, if you were going to Mars, would you like to have food on the way to Mars or no? I'm going to say yes, I would like to have food. So I have to figure out how to grow food. And that's me doing a plant experiment because we're trying to understand how do we grow food on the way to Mars. And what's really exciting is not only is that good for space, but there are a lot of places down here on Earth where it's hard to grow food, whether it's in a city or off in a desert, then we need ways to grow food. And so we're learning about those things up in space. We do things like with our spacesuits. I mean, these are kind of astronaut things that you think about. Oh, they wear spacesuits and oh, they do robotics. I mean, let me ask you, Michael, are you actually seeing the annotation request come up on the screen? Do you see that on the screen?
I am not. I'm not sure if Amber Jewel, our producer in the other room, is.
Boys and girls, please put your hands in your laps. I know that it's tempting to touch that pen that pops up on the screen, but I need you to put your hands in your lap because the more that you touch those things on the screen, the more distracting it is for you to hear what our presenter is having to say.
And boys and girls, this will be the last time because I don't want to interrupt Cady anymore. But since you do have control over your screen, if you can't be responsible and you click on the buttons, you might get sent to the waiting room area where you're not able to participate. So sorry about that, Cady. I don't think you'll have that problem any longer.
You know, it actually doesn't bother me. I just wondered if you see it on your screen. I just didn't want it to block the picture for you.
No, it's just because you're sharing your screen.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so even when I see them on my screen, you don't see them on yours.
That's correct.
Awesome. Okay. So I was saying that basically we you know, there's things you think about, oh, they're in space. They must do. I'm going to go back one picture here, maybe. Let's see. Sometimes it goes back, sometimes not. That, you know, that we do spacewalks. That's me in my spacesuit. But then we also do things like robotics. I was an expert in the robotic arm. It looks kind of tiny, but it's actually like as long as a school bus, like a big school bus. And so it's really, I mean, it's actually each part of it is that long. So it's really big. And that thing that it's holding on to, that supply ship, that is as big as a school bus. And so one of my jobs was to figure out, boy, when a new supply ship as big as a school bus comes up to the space station, how am I going to capture that with the robotic arm? So we asked ourselves a lot of different questions to figure that out. And this little movie is one of my favorite movies. And it just shows you a little bit about living in space. We exercise a lot. I know you go out on the playground, but we would float around. So we have to kind of tie ourselves down to our treadmill. This is my friend Mike, and he is washing his face and his hair. And even though I have a lot of hair and Mike doesn't have so much, I can wash my hair too. This is Mike climbing into his sleeping bag in his cabin. That's where we each stay. We each have one of those. So we have a place to be alone, change our clothes. Satoshi's doing experiments. Mike is fixing something that he learned how to fix because he learned how to read the directions. And that's their crew. And now they're looking out the window. So they're looking down at the earth. Everything you see is blue. That is ocean. And then those are clouds, those little white things. But you can see by floating around up there, we really get to see some it's really just very fun. And I think all of us love to be in space. We love floating around, but we also learn to do things differently. Satoshi is learning about space baseball. Now, everybody else is working on different things. So Satoshi has to be the pitcher. He pitches the ball. Oh, he's got a race. He's trying to beat the ball. Now he's going to be the batter. Yes. And now, oh, of course, he's got to be the outfielder. He wants to make sure his shirt's all tucked in. So you can see that it's pretty interesting. And if any of you have ever jumped into a swimming pool, that's kind of what we're doing there. But you notice we can't really just dive. We have to kind of like work our way around. And this was a pretty fun game that we had to figure out, well, that needs a little bit of practice. And this is a crew eating dinner all around the dinner table. with our packages of food. And now I'm going to go on to some other things here. So this is a picture of our crew. And, you know, we have a very important mission, and I wanted to talk to you. I'm going to ask this question, but I know the answer already. If I were to ask you if you work in groups in school, I know the answer is yes. And we work in groups in space, and I want to talk to you all about that. And so in space, I was with 8 other guys at different times. And so it was myself and a bunch of guys. And you can see that we're kind of different. And in this picture, I sort of stick out because, well, I have the longest hair and I'm wearing a different color shirt than everybody else. And I'm very proud of this picture. It is our space crew and President Obama. And he had some questions about space. And he figured that the best way to get his answers was to ask the people who were doing the experiments. He said, why don't we just invite them to the White House and they can explain what is interesting, what is hard, what's important about space. And so our crew got to do that. But I wanted you to look at this picture because in this picture, I think it's, you know, I look kind of different, like, oh, she's different. We just notice me in a visual way right away. But let's look at this picture. Now, I think that many people got to watch the movie Hidden Figures. And in the middle of this picture is Catherine Coleman Johnson. Her middle name was just like my name. I don't think we're related, but I feel like we're sisters. Because when I look at the kinds of things that she had to do in order to actually bring the gifts that she really had to make sure that we could get to space, well, she had to be pretty independent and she just had to know in her heart, I'm doing the work that I'm supposed to do. And we call this movie Hidden Figures, but here's something I think to think about. Here is Catherine Johnson. It's a picture from the movie. And she is a woman of color. And she's wearing a dress of color, bright green. And she's in the middle of a whole bunch of, well, white guys who are all wearing white shirts. It's pretty easy to see her, isn't it? Really, there's nothing hidden about her. But she had some hidden talents. She had talents that people didn't see because they just didn't look hard enough. So now, fast forward, let's go to space, okay? And I'm gonna, let's see, I'm gonna go back here. This is our space crew. And we're up there in space. There's only the 6 of us. If we don't get the job done, I mean, there's nobody else. And we don't get to pick each other. So we have to figure out how to get the job done together. And that affects you too in school when you're working in groups. And sometimes you're in a group and you think, oh, I don't know if I like that guy, or oh, he never talks, or oh, she talks all the time, or well, you know, I feel like I did all the work. Everybody has those feelings about working in groups, even astronauts. But the way that we work through them is 2 things. We keep in mind, what is the mission? The mission is the most important. For us, is exploring space. And for us, for our space crew, right now, for all of you and me and my family and Mr. Mike's family, our mission is to be safe at home by staying home and not being able to play with our friends. So we have a mission, right? And in order to do our mission, we have to connect with each other. This is my friend Paolo. It's really easy to connect with Paolo. You can see he's just friendly. It's just easy. I can say, hey, Paolo, I need help with this. And I mean, when you look at Paolo, you think, oh, Paolo would probably help her, right? Well, this is my friend Nicole. And I think about, what do we have in common? How can we connect to each other? What do I know about her? But more importantly, what do I not know about her? Now with Nicole, it's pretty easy for us to kind of go, oh yeah, we know this, because we both have sons that are the same age, that were 10 years old when we went to space. So we already have like a way that we know how to talk to each other. And this is my friend Scott. We were up there for several months together. And well, he looks kind of serious, right? And like maybe he doesn't talk very much. And clearly I talk really a lot, right? Well, we're pretty different, but we have to find a way to learn about each other. And I needed to learn that, well, this is Scott too. And Scott he's using those big rubber bands. Do you see how they make an X? That is like the biggest slingshot ever. And we learned to play like a cool game with the slingshot. It was very fun. And so I had to realize that even when Scott looks really serious, well, there's another Scott. If I look hard enough, I will see him. And the same thing with my friend Al Drew. We didn't know each other very well, and then we practiced a lot of robotics together and spacewalking, and I was his robotic arm person when he was out there doing a spacewalk. And this is my favorite picture of Al and me. And in the background, you can see Mike too. And the reason is that we had a big mission that day, Al's spacewalk, and it was so hard. And we had to try so hard not to make mistakes, and we made some. And then we had to figure out, well, what are we going to do now? And we did those things together as a team. And when we were done, we were so proud of our work together. And you see that big smile on my face and Al's face and Mike in the background. But it takes work and practice to make a team like that. And you have to just think about, what are the things I know about the people I'm with? Gee, and what else could I discover, especially about the people that you might not feel like, oh, I don't know, they're so different. I don't know if I like them. So all of us are different. All of us have things to share. This is about, I think sharing is really important. I like music. I brought my flutes up there. I like to play. This is a short little video that shows you me playing my flute. You can see my big space hair, which is pretty fun, I think. It would be a little easier now if I didn't have to cut my hair. I learned how to cut space hair. So this is me playing my flute, but I like to play with other people. And this is my friend Ian Anderson. We weren't friends when I went to space. I didn't even know him, but we both had a mission to bring music to space, and he helped me. And so this is Mr. Ian playing. He was the very first person to play the flute for rock music, not just classical music. So I really wanted to bring his flute to space.
Thanks, Colonel Catherine Coleman in the International Space
Look at my
Station.
flute.
We should remember that
Do you see it turning around?
Scientists and astronauts are still every bit the rocket heroes they were 50 years ago. So from the cultural city of Perm in Russia, let's salute Cady, Dima, and Paolo up there in orbit. And of course, the legendary Yuri Gagarin. Go safely.
So, Mr. Mike, I'll flip through a few more slides and then we'll have questions. Will that work for you?
That sounds good, Katie.
Okay. So we talked about sharing. And, you know, sharing, and it's hard to share. You have to be brave to share. I mean, I'm not the most amazing flute player in the whole world, and I had to be brave in order to share. And so realize that it's not, doesn't, just because it's a good thing to do doesn't mean that it's easy, right? And if things are hard, well, you just have to get more help, ask more questions, and work at it. And so I wanted to show you a little bit about perspective and the value of looking at each other and looking at things differently. And so here's looking at the Earth from space. That's a hurricane. That's our Aurora Borealis. This is where I live up in New England. It's Boston. And then also like right above us is Canada. So we have Boston, we have Massachusetts, we have New Hampshire, we have Maine, we have Canada, all in one picture. And this is where we see them from our window, which looks right side up. But if you think about the fact that we're looking at the Earth, well, maybe we're kind of upside down. And I never thought to take this picture, but that's my friend Don's feet right there. And he took that picture. I mean, I didn't think to take that picture. We all look at things differently. We all have something to share. And here's the Earth. This is my friend Tracy looking at the Earth. And this is our crew. Now, I think you probably see me in this picture because I have the big hair, right? But it's not so easy because I'm so used to looking at things right side up, and maybe turn your head just a little bit sort of upside down, and then you can kind of see me. Yep, I see you turn your heads a little bit. Okay, so now look at this picture. Well, you're used to looking at things right side up, and so now it's really easy to see me, but what about the guys up in the top? Here, I'm going to show you another one. So here's my friends. This is Miss Dottie and Miss Melko, Miss Tracy and Miss Stephanie, all astronauts. And I see the two on the bottom in the blue shirts, but up on the top, I don't quite see them until I look at them. Maybe turn your head a little bit, upside down a little bit, yep. But what if I turn the picture upside down? And the reason I show you these funny space pictures is I'm trying to encourage you to look at things a different way. When you have a question, well, maybe answer it from the other direction. and if you have a question and then nobody seems to be, you ask people and they answer it, but then it doesn't make sense. Well, ask a question from a different way. So always try to look at things just a little bit differently. And sometimes the hardest place to do that is in your very own family, where sometimes, oh, I don't know, even though we really love each other, sometimes we sort of irritate each other. That's why my son, Jamie, my husband, Josh, and this is a picture of me leaving to go to space, and Jamie was left on the ground. And when my husband sent me this picture, it made me very sad, but very happy to see him. It's very cold in Russia. You can see he has a very warm Russian hat on. And then this is the picture of Jamie that you saw from before. Now his cat is a little bit unusual, Fang. You saw Fang before, and Fang thinks he's a dog. He just does. He doesn't understand that he's not a dog. And so we just have to take him out like he's a dog because that's what he wants to do. So, and this is Jamie now. He's grown up. He's 19 years old now. And this is Ben and I. And I wanted to show you these because he's an artist. And I think that some of you might want to be astronauts out there, and some of you might want to be engineers and scientists, but I'm really hoping that some of you want to be artists and writers and people who know how to share. And my husband likes to share by blowing glass, by making glass things, and he always loved things about space. That's one of the things we really have in common. And he's known for designing these planets that are just so beautiful. And that kind of love of family is what helps us go from a crew standing in a picture looking like, okay, with our eyes big, we're ready for our mission, to this picture. We're really an astronaut family. And it's because we asked each other questions that were sometimes hard to ask, embarrassing to ask. We asked each other for help. We offered help when we thought people didn't know that they needed it. So it really takes a lot to become a space family, just like it takes a lot to be a family too. But being a family kind of helps with that. And this is my friend Tracy looking out at the Earth, and I think it's a really important view for us. And this is the future. This is a little bit for a lot actually for you. I mean, this is one of the things we're thinking about bringing to the moon and working on the moon this way. It's a moon buggy. And the little door that you see there is someplace that we might do our spacewalks from. And you see me there in the front. Well, when we go to the moon and we go to Mars, it probably won't be me that's going, but it really might be you. And that's why Mr. Mike and all your teachers and your parents are really hoping that you're listening and realizing this very last slide. This is my son. And to me, when I look at this picture, it's my son saying, hey, look at this frog I caught. I'm kind of proud of catching it, but it's just, I mean, he was just so excited about what he knew. And he was excited about, he thought, I wonder what it feels like to catch a frog. And I wonder what frogs are like. I wonder what they know. I wonder what frogs hate. I wonder what frogs like. And I think that your questions are so important. And the things that you're excited about are so important. And that's why, with Mr. Mike's permission, I will take questions.
Thank you so much, Cady. And, as you were talking about doing hard things, that's one of the things that we're trying to help our Zaharis learners realize is that they can do hard things, unbelievable things. If they can just imagine it, they can create it. But that involves taking risks.
It does.
And
You have to be brave.
Yeah, one question, then we'll turn it over to the boys and girls. In your journey of doing something exceptionally hard, some would even say that it was impossible, but yet you did it anyways. Did doubt or fear ever creep in? And when you were in space, as you were doing something exceptionally hard, were you ever scared?
I really love that as the first question, Mr. Mike, because I have doubts and things all the time, like every day. All of us do. We're humans. And I know that especially when you see films or you see a picture, you see, one of the astronauts walking on the moon, it just looks like, oh, they were born as a little baby. And then they just had to wait till they grew up, and then they became an astronaut, and they just did those things because they're just like really good and never had doubts. They never did anything wrong. They were good at everything. Just not true. All of us have some things that we're good at, and then we have things that we're not good at. Now, for me, I like chemistry. And chemistry is something I kind of like thinking about. I just kind of like the way, when you pour things together, or like I love cooking because it's really a lot of chemistry. But figuring out if I push here and then this goes here, how's that really going to work? Like physics, boy, that's not very easy for me. But you just saw my job. I mean, getting off a launch pad, that's a lot of physics. And so in my job, I need physics. So what do I have to do? I just have to ask for a lot of help and different kinds of help and realize that I have to just keep, it's my right to learn those things. And I just have to keep asking until I understand what I need to know to accomplish my mission. And you know, I think particularly about, you know, learning about what's happening today. We all have a lot of questions and things are really hard to understand about our pandemic. And so we have to really just keep asking the questions we have, because if you have a question, everybody has that question.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, boys and girls, if you have a question, raise your hand and we will look at our screen here and try to call on somebody. It looks like.
Call on Allie because she has her cat.
Oh, you bet.
Allie, do you have a question?
You can unmute yourself.
Not that everybody has to have a cat. I just happened to see it. Allie, did you have a dog earlier too?
Road. I did. He's probably outside or something.
So Allie, what's your question?
Question is, the first time you went to space, did you feel like that the gravity felt kind of weird?
You seen you across the road, Brandon?
What do you mean, Allie?
No, when you went on the first time you
Went to space. When I first went to space, you know, it only takes us 8.5 minutes to go to space. And then when we get up there, suddenly everything is like floating. And it's like being Peter Pan. We get to fly everywhere. And it was magical. And I really, really loved it. And can you imagine living in a world where you can just like give a little push with the finger and there you go? It was really wonderful. Okay, I'll let somebody else field the questions maybe. Or should I field them? What do you think, Mr. Mike?
I think you're doing a great job and you can stream back and forth between screens if you need to. So you go right ahead.
Okay. Aubrey, what's your question? I see your hand up.
So when like the water bubbles are there,
Mm-hmm.
when you have them in space, when you like touch them, do they pop?
So you said water bubbles, and what's interesting is remember the drop that had his face, that had like a big drop and then somebody's face in the drop? And actually what that was a water bubble and then, or sorry, a water drop with a bubble in the middle, and it made sort of a reflection, which is kind of cool. And it's not so much that they pop, but I'll give you an example of something that we used to like to do kind of for fun, was we had our own version of soccer, okay? And so we would take a juice bag. Oh, and I actually have some things here to be able to show you a little bit. This is like our drink bags, okay? And it's just like when you have a bag of like juice or something where you poke a straw into it here on Earth. It's just like those, except we have a little way to close them off too, which is important, right? And so if I fill this with water and then up in space, and then I squeeze, I'm going to get a big blob of water here. And so I can pull my bag away, and now here's the water blob, 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 right? And then if I'm going to pretend that you, Aubrey, are right there. I'm going to send this to you. I'm going to go, and that water blob is going to go closer and closer to you. And then you're going to blow it back. And we're going to like kind of like play soccer that way. And the way the game ends is when one of us is wearing the water blob. Because as soon as it touches something, it's going to sort of spread out onto that person. Does that make sense? So they don't really pop, but they definitely are going to go somewhere and they're going to land on something. Okay, how about AC 2665? I see a mom and I see a hand.
Alina, that's you. Gotta unmute yourself.
Cook family.
You're unmuted. We hear you.
What's the question? Do you have your
You
question?
can come back in a minute if you want.
I remember. Did you meet your husband in space, like in your crew?
Meaning, oh, did I meet him there?
Yeah.
No, actually, we met because one day I was trying to find a friend of mine, and I mixed up her home and her work order, and I called her work, and she worked for this artist. And this guy answered, and I thought it was her husband. And so I just thought I called really a wrong number. And he was so funny and interesting. And I had all sorts of questions for him that I called him back. And so that's why I really love your question answering or question asking approach, because if you just think, you know, how many times does somebody call and you're like, oh, wrong number, but you never know who's on the other end of that phone. Okay, how about the girl who is at 14802? With your hand up. Yes, you. Yes. You're still muted. There you go.
Was it when you were in space with the water bubbles? How can they stay like that? How can they like stay like the water droplets? How can they stay?
Great question. How do they stay like that? They stay like that because think about a water drop down here. Okay. Now on let's think about water in your I don't have a very good example here, but just think about if you look sometime at water in a glass, okay, you're going to you see water in a glass, but then I want you to look like really close and right at the edge of the glass. You're going to see that it kind of goes up on the edge of the glass. And that's because it turns out there's like a war going on there. The water molecules really like to be together. Oh, water and water. Oh, we like each other. Oh, but they kind of like the glass too. So they kind of want to climb up, but then they also want to be together, and gravity pushes them into that glass. Well, suddenly up in space without gravity, we get to see, well, how much do they really just want to be together? Does that make any sense? A little bit. And I urge you to maybe look at water drops in space. You're going to see a lot of really cool videos and you'll get a better sense for it. But basically, when we go up there, we don't have very much gravity, just the tiniest little, such a small amount. And that means that gravity is just not a very big force, whereas down here, it's so much bigger than those tiny, tiny little forces between the water molecules. And up there, we get to see what do they really want to do. And it just turns out that that's really important down here on Earth too. Does your brother have a question really quick?
Well, I want to ask, how do you even get to be chosen to go up into the space station? Like what class?
How do you get to be chosen to go up in the space station? Well, there's something really important you have to do. There's a couple important things, okay? First of all, no one gets to be an astronaut like, oh, I want to, I mean, so you can have a goal to be an astronaut, but actually when we're picking astronauts, everybody has to be something else that they love first. And so I am a chemist first. I loved chemistry and I learned to do lots of experiments. Some people are doctors. We have a veterinarian. We have engineers. We have pilots. We have school teachers. We have a school principal. Yes. A former police officer. Lots and lots of things, but you have to find the thing that you love and realize, I mean, when we're living on Mars, aren't we going to need everything that we need down here on Earth too? So that's one important thing. Everybody does something else first. The other thing is that you're never going to get to be an astronaut ever unless you raise your hand and you tell people what are your ideas or why, what do you have that would be really good for this team? And boy, is that hard to do. You have to be kind of brave. And, you know, sometimes I just think it's really important to realize that it's not bragging when you just say, hey, I think that maybe if I was part of that team, I could help do this. You have to learn how to raise your hand and say what you bring, what your question is, because other people might not be brave enough to do that. Okay, and let's see down here, how about Breinholt? I see Breinholt on the screen. And I see two boys. Almost. You're getting there. Yep, you got it.
I would like to ask, how many engines are there in space on the rocket?
Oh, how many engines are there on the rocket? It depends on the rocket. And it depends how much help the rocket needs to be going up to space. On the space shuttle, we have 3 main engines. And then we also have those solid rocket boosters that have propellant in them. And those help us get to space too. And in general, this is the way all rocket launches work, is that The hardest thing is when you're close to the earth and you have the most gravity, is getting off the ground. So when we're done with something, so we use a lot of propulsion, a lot of propellant, a lot of rocket power. And then, but when we're done with that and we don't need as much, we kick those things off, because even the cases actually, even just the rockets themselves, even without the fuel in them, take up a lot of weight. So we use a lot of fuel, and then we don't need as much. We send things away, we kick them off, and often we reuse them. And then actually we keep going, and then we kicked everything off. And you noticed we launched as kind of like a stack of like things all stacked up like a rocket. But when we arrived at the space station, well, we were just like a little bitty spacecraft, right? So we were inside that rocket. And when as we didn't need that protection, we gave away and sent home all those pieces. Somebody else's question? I'm seeing some very cute dogs. Hey, so ADD in the red shirt with your hand up, blonde hair, and a boy with the green shirt.
No.
And I'm just going to tell you, let's see, Ashton, your question will be next. Okay, so we're going to listen to Ad, and Ashton, you're going to get ready and be next. Okay, Ad, go ahead. You and your sister.
Do bubbles ever pop in outer space?
Air bubbles.
Do air bubbles ever pop in an outer space? Well, it depends where you mean. Do you mean inside or outside? I think a good way to think about it is that they're not really bubbles, they're actually blobs of water. And what's kind of interesting is, here, if you wanted to wash your hair, you would just maybe turn on the shower, like, right? But I don't have a shower up there. So what I do is I take one of these bags of water, filled up with water, and I stick it next to my head, and I squeeze. If there was water in here, I squeeze, and the water comes out, and I can actually make a big, big, big water blob on my head. And then I can squish, 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 and I can put a little soap in there, and I can wash my hair. And then I would take a towel and gently, because I don't want to go whoop and have water everywhere, I would take a towel gently and I'd sop out all the water, and then I would have clean hair. Does that answer your question? I think you're asking how things behave in space there. Yeah. And where was my next question? I remember we talked. Let's see, where did we go? He was wearing a he was wearing a spacesuit. Orange spacesuit. Ashton, go ahead.
What your favorite planet is?
Oh, what my favorite planet is?
Yes.
I really love Earth. I think Earth is really, I know we're going to go other places, but there's something very special about home. If I was going to pick another planet past that, I would say Jupiter, partly because I like to see it in the night sky. It looks like a star, but it doesn't twinkle. And sometimes we can see Jupiter and sometimes we can't, but I like realizing that it's so far away, but I can still see it. Okay, another question. And let me just, so Ashley, why don't you go ahead, Ashley? And after that, Kayla Long, you're going to be next, okay?
It says Ashley, but I think you're meaning the little fellow with the Superman shirt. There you go, buddy.
It did say Ashley. And I couldn't tell. Okay, go ahead, Superman
Okay,
shirt.
so is your spacesuit heavy?
Is my spacesuit heavy? Yes. The one that we do our spacewalks in weighs 300 pounds. That's heavy. So then we have to ask ourselves, how in the world are we going to practice before we go to space? Now, up in space, whether it's heavy or not, doesn't really matter, right? But and actually, here's my big spacesuit, right? It weighs 300 pounds. So we learn how to practice. We learn how to spacewalk in a giant swimming pool where they weigh us down, so we don't really sink, but we don't really float. So they, because we're a big giant balloon, really, we have air inside, and so they put weights on us so that we don't really sink and we don't really float, and then we can practice our spacewalks. Okay, and let's see. How about Betty Dutcher? I mean, I know that might not be your name. I just say the name I see on my screen. The purple and pink sweatshirt.
Prudence.
And I think I might have said someone was next and I forgot them. So maybe, Mr. Mike, you can help me find them again.
Let's see. I can't remember who it was either.
Find him. I'm going to find him.
Prudence, were you able to unmute yourself?
Cassidy.
Oh, Cassidy.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Why do people want to live on Mars so much?
Well, Cassidy, why do you think?
I don't know.
I think it's because people wonder, like, you know, we're people and we know what it's like right around us, but you always wonder, like, what's it like somewhere else? And somewhere else, like, we used to think that there was, or at least for me as an astronaut, I live here on Earth, and I would think here's Earth, and then space is like somewhere far away. But then I got to live in space, and I got to realize that, you know, if here is Earth, here's space, well, I'm still an Earthling. And so maybe space is, I mean, maybe Earth is bigger than we thought. So I think it's just interesting to think about, where do we start and where does other things begin, and what does our whole place, our whole universe look like? Because there's no reason we can't explore all of it. And the person I forgot with the question, they had several kids there. It says Kayla Long.
Yeah, that was us. That was us.
Oh, that was you. Okay. Okay. Great. And how about Shepard Coons? Got to unmute there.
How much does it to fill up a rocket ship?
How much does it take to build a rocket ship? How much what do you
How
mean?
many gas take to fill up a rocket ship?
Oh, you know, some people are really good at knowing all the numbers and everything. It's not necessarily something I'm great at. And so, and plus I feel like when I need to, I can look that up. But the thing that I remember, I mean, I kind of want to know whether it's little or big. And actually I will show off, where is my favorite book? I like to understand whether things are big or little. And actually, if any of you have ever seen this book, it's one of my favorite books because it just talks about magnitude, how big everything is or how little everything is. And what I remember is that I think that when we're going to space in the space shuttle, the amount of gas that we are using is like, I don't know, it's something like 20 swimming pools every second. We're emptying 20 giant swimming pools every second. And it takes us 8.5 minutes. But I urge you to go and look those numbers up. And then when you read the numbers, think, how do I know if that is little or big? I think that's actually a very good question to ask a lot of times. Okay, I'm looking for another question, another hand up. O'Leary in the green shirt.
Space just like a giant hole that like never ends?
Is space just like a giant hole that never ends? Well, we're always finding out new things about how to think about space. And I think that that is a possibility. I personally think that it ends somewhere. And at the same time, we're still exploring to figure out how we can get further and further and further. And when I say we're exploring, sometimes those are spacecraft that we send ahead and they take photographs and they take movies and they show us. I mean, it's still people. I mean, those robots, those spacecraft don't build themselves. It's still us. But they help us understand the answers to those questions. And that's a really hard question that you asked. And I don't exactly know the answer. And I think the reason I don't know is because it's always changing, because we're always learning more. And let's see, I don't have, when I go through pictures, I don't always see the faces. Now, how about Tristan? I can see they're coming.
How did you get space sick when you were in space?
Great question. When I did and I didn't. On my first mission, I didn't. And we think that part of that is that being really well rested and being really well hydrated can help you not feel sort of that kind of queasy kind of, uh-oh, I don't feel well. And on my second mission, when we launched the telescope, the big giant telescope that looks at black holes, well, we had a lot of work to do very fast, and we had to like move around a lot. And when you first get to space, your head is like, whoa, this is really strange, and your head is really kind of working hard. And just like some people who get car sick, some astronauts get space sick. And so it just means that you end up, you kind of go, oh, do I feel that way? Oh, it's yucky. I kind of hate that. Maybe I don't. Oh, no, I probably do. And just like here on the ground, I mean, we have a job to do. And so what we do is we have special bags that we can throw up into like that it has a way to wipe our face and everything. And then we close the bag because we wouldn't want that getting everywhere. And, our friends help us. It's always nice when you don't feel well to have a friend help you. And even if things are yucky, I mean, that's what friends are for. But many astronauts are sick when they get to space. And then after a little while, we feel better. Okay.
Katie, what if we filled one more question?
Okay.
You've been so generous with your time today. So why don't we fill?
Guys, I'm good for a bit if you are, whatever you want to do. But I know we have kind of a time limit. Can we do like 3?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to be sensitive to your day and your schedule.
I can do a few more minutes if that's okay.
Okay.
How about what do we do until like 10 after? How about that?
That sounds great.
Okay. So I saw Michelle before your picture went away. Let's see.
How do you store food and how do you
Okay, Michelle, could you ask
store food and how do you eat it?
And say it one more time.
How do you store food and how do you eat it? Right?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I actually have my collection of space food here. So this is granola with blueberries. Okay, see, it has a label. There's a little Velcro dot here so I can stick it something. It's like a little plastic bag. We use a lot of camping food, and we use a lot of food that like the military uses that's in pouches, that's just sealed up, maybe like a bag of tuna fish, or it's that kind of sealing. And so for my granola here, I would put water in this part, and we do that because our faucet, we don't have a faucet we just turn on, but we have a water that comes out of a needle. So I stick this on the needle and I dial up a certain amount of water, and then I put that in here, and I usually kind of mush it around. Maybe I want it to be warm. I might put it, we have like almost like a little suitcase where that has, it's like 2 hot plates, and if we put stuff in between, and then our stuff gets hot. And so I might do that with it. And we also have some things that come in cans like this. And some of our food, it's an international space station. So some of our food, this is actually plof isudaka, and it means like a rice dish with all sorts of vegetables and things. And let's see if I have any other. And then we also, and then even we have plain old cookies like we might have here at home. So that's how we store it. And I would say it's actually a little bit, takes a long time to do things with the food, because I open a drawer that has all those packages in them, and we keep them down like with webbing. But when we try to reorganize the food, it actually takes a long time, and that's probably the biggest pain. Okay, and let's see, how about Mackenzie Mills? I see a hand.
Do you have a reason of why you wanted to become an astronaut?
Why did I want to become an astronaut? I really loved chemistry and I loved experiments, but I also loved adventure and trying some new things. And I wanted a job, and I liked, I like helping people go on a journey. Like, I knew that if they picked me to be an astronaut, I would help other people kind of come to space with me in spirit. And so I don't know, and I was really proud to learn how to do that and to be an astronaut. I'm looking at Kira Holm. I am looking at you cooking. I want to say it's scrambled eggs. Are you cooking scrambled eggs? Yeah, don't get burned or anything. But if you want to ask a question in just a minute, we'll wait until you have to put your pan down and stuff. But I love to cook, and I think that's like chemistry there. How about the Maryland family? Kira, well, we're waiting on them. Kira, if you want to ask, you can ask. You can unmute and you can ask a question or you can say hello. I know you're busy cooking.
Do you cook things when you're there?
Do we cook things when we're there? That's a great question. And I think you might have seen in Kara's square there, she was, stirring her eggs on the stove there. And if you were in space, if you stir them kind of hard, they might just fly away across the space station. And especially if they were wet and yucky, that might not be good. And so it's kind of hard to cook there because it's sort of hard to add things together. But we can use like maybe syringes to add liquids. But it's actually like when you think about baking bread, if you think about like a bag of flour, when you open the flour is going to be everywhere, right? And it's going to, it actually would be hazardous to your lungs really to be breathing flour all the time. So we have to be pretty creative. And most of our food is already made. I would do things like I would have a package of rice and I would have a package of curry and I would sort of transfer one to the other because I like to eat them mixed up. But it's kind of hard to cook up there. And I felt like there was other things I would rather do than cook, but I do have a friend who liked to cook up there. And how about Ruby Silva? Yep. Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead.
My question was, how did it feel when you came out from outer space back onto Earth? How did you feel like the gravity?
How did it feel when I came from space back to Earth? I felt very heavy, first of all. And second of all, imagine for a minute that I'm back in space. And when I want to move around, I just have to push like what with one little finger. And I can fly across the whole space station. And so, and you can look at a video online. It's called Splitting Hairs in Gravity, because if I took one hair from my head, and that's because I have long hair, right? Let's say I took one hair and I had it between my fingers, and then I used it like to push off of something, like maybe like a railing or an edge. If I pushed with my one hair on something, I could actually push myself across the whole space station. It's that easy to move up there. And if I pushed hard, it would break the hair. But if I push slowly, I can push myself across the space station. So it takes so little force to move. And then now I'm on the ground and I take a step. And it's like being a big giant and your head is like, whoa, what is going on? That was such a big thing. She took a step. And so someone was asking me if I was sick in space. Well, I will tell you that many of us, at least I can only speak for me, don't feel well when we get home. But there's actually some really good medicine for that too. And that only lasts like a little while, but it takes a little while for our head to get used to being on the earth. I'm going to take one last question here. Shadow, I'm going to take your question and then I have to go.
How does your husband make the glass art?
Oh, well, I think if you look up glass blowing on the internet, you'll see some of that. And that's an interesting question really about gravity, because what happens with glass blowing is glass, we know glass is very hard, right, when we're using it. But if we heat this really, really hot, it becomes like honey. And that means that it's going to be soft, but it's also going to drip because of gravity. And so what he does is he actually rotates, he sort of rolls he's going to roll the glass like this to keep it from, and he's using centrifugal force to keep it actually on the end of his place that the way he sort of picked it up. And so I think it's really an interesting combination of, he's always trying to fight gravity. And I think if we let him go to space and he didn't have to do that, he would make some really interesting art. But you can look up glass blowing. He likes to make planets, and so you can look him up too. Has a website called Mega Planet, like Big Planet. And it has lots of cool videos. But if you just look up glass blowing videos, I think you'll be fascinated. But there's lots of different kinds of art. There's drawing, there's painting, there's music, there's telling stories, there's writing stories, and there's all sorts of art. And all of it is important, because if we can't create the vision of what we want to do and explore, well, we won't be able to have people know that they want to be on the team if they don't understand the mission. And everybody understands missions in different ways. So we always need lots of questions, and we need lots and lots of ways to show people vision. So I'm going to say thank you very much for me. And these have been, you should give yourselves a hand. These have been great questions. You are great at doing mute and unmute. I was so proud of you. I mean, I think what I would ask, does anybody have a question? I would call on somebody, they would unmute right away. You are very prepared. And I really like your very thoughtful questions. I can tell that you're a different kind of school. And I like being part of your education. So thank you very much. Oh, and I see a lot of really good space costumes too. And I say costumes, but these are space suits. I call it my space suit too.
Katie, thank you so much. And yes, I'm so proud of my Zaharis family, and they did ask thoughtful questions. But our mission at Zaharis, and we're very serious about it, it's learning, caring, rejoicing, and working together to create a more just, compassionate, insightful world. Thank you for working with us today to create a more insightful world. And thank you for doing something so exceptionally hard and sharing your insights of what you learned with others. I feel like we're kindred spirits. I know that we're going to continue to work together. Boys and girls, we're actually discussing right now. We're very excited that we were able to have this opportunity today, but we feel like children all over should have these types of experiences. And right now, unfortunately, they're not, as schools are closed. So we're talking about possibly working with Arizona State University and expanding this to the entire state of Arizona. So we will keep you plugged in. Katie, thank you so much for being such a kind, compassionate learner with us. You gave us some good ideas for homework about going to space station sighting and putting in our zip codes. And I think you're going to help us expand our learning into tomorrow and the next day and the days to come. Thank you so very much. I hope you're feeling the love. And we look forward to visiting with you again one day when we're on the other side of this challenge and trial.
Me too. And I love seeing all your faces. It's really nice for me, and good questions. And I see books, and I see spacesuits and cooking. And it was really awesome for me to get to visit your world today. So thank you very much. And keep asking those great questions, because every question is a great question. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Everybody wave to Katie. Thank you, Katie.
Bye, you guys.
Bye-bye.